I worked out for myself a few years ago that Prozac does fuck all, apart from actually make a right mess of your digestive system. I'd have been about 26 and I went to see the doctor. And I don't like doctors at the best of times. And I went to see the doctor, and it was because I had this sort of lump growing under me armpit. It was like a pronounced sort of lump, hard. And I'm like, this is concerning me, because you hear of people getting like cancer and the like, and it's like that's an important sort of nerve cluster, and I could feel it, you know what I mean? So I decided to go to the doctors, and I went to the doctors, and I'm there to talk about this kind of lump under my arm. But I've got off the bus in Rochdale Town Centre, and the doctors I'm going to go to is about 3/4 of a mile away, and I've got like 10 or 15 minutes to get there, and I'm not forgetting a taxi, so I've not run there. I've up bloody hills like that. I've just, as they say, hightailed it. So I've just walked as fast as I could there without breaking into running. Got there on time, but it's quite a day. And I get there and I'm like, so I'm like a sweaty mess sat in a business suit. But I've just hightailed it in the summertime, up from the bus station to my street. Probably should have got a taxi, but it's one of them where you're more or less in the middle of the town, so there's no bus to jump on to get you there. It's like one stop out. So I gets there, and I see his doctor, and I gets to talking about what's wrong with me, why I've turned up. And at this time, it was before I've gotten like career-endingly injured playing football, so I'm in good shape. It might beg a belief because I'm a bit hefty, but I'm in good shape. It's like I can still run for 90 minutes. It's weird that, it's like you can be young and a footballer, and you can drink 60 pints a week and still play football for 90 minutes. You might not be as good as you might be, but you still play. It's like football match conditioning, that being used to play 90 minutes. When you lose that, it never comes back. Oh, you'll never get it right again. I've known plenty of people who stop playing and then come back, and then it's a matter of, oh, I got used to. I've fallen out of the habit of playing this length of time, exercising this length of time. So I'm still fit back then, and I goes, and I gets to talking about why I'm there. I've got this lump under my arm, and the doctor said, "What's going on with you? It's like you're breaking out in a sweat." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I've just hightailed it up from town centre." And she says, she takes my temperature, and then she gets that thing to take blood pressure, that thing on the arm, right? She puts that on me. And it comes back like 120 something over 90. That's a high rate of blood pressure. But I'd just been exercising. And I'm one of them people, me, when I break wind, as they say, I get breathing. I am a breathing and sweating sort of guy. So it's just me. It's just me heating and cooling system. It's pretty good. And she takes my blood pressure and she says, just having looked at my blood pressure, and then she asked me some questions. She says, "Do you smoke?" I says, "Yeah." She says, "Are you a drinker too?" "Well, yeah, I do like the odd pint, but I stay in shape, I'm still very active." She said, "That doesn't matter." I'm like, "Okay." And she says, "You're 26 now." She says, "You're not going to make it to 35. Excuse me? And all she had, right, was me turning up, taking my blood pressure in that state, asking me questions as whether I drink and I smoke. And she come to the conclusion that I weren't going to live till I was 35. And she laid it on me like, you're going to die. What? So I suggested what to do. And she put me on a course of beta blockers to, as she put it, thin my blood to better regulate my blood pressure. And she says you will get side effects from using those. So for the side effects, you're going to have to take Prozac as well. Like, right, so you're giving me two common, what they would call psychotropic drugs to control my blood pressure. She says, here, you might get a few side effects, but she was on to me as to say, if you don't immediately start taking this sort of heart medication, you're going to die. So I goes on this stuff, and it's a shock to me. A shock, because it would be, because you're a doctor, you're supposed to listen to them. And she was being a fucking mind reader. She was being a witch doctor, and she just sold me a story that I was going to be dependent on this medication for the rest of my life on pain of fucking death. Right? So she puts me on this mixed medication and says, and do you know what the first side effect was? Started shitting myself. Excuse me? Yeah, shitting myself. I'd be stood in my kitchen talking to somebody, having a brew, and then the next thing is you go pop, and it'd be like, excuse me, I'm gonna have to go and like, jump in the shower here. Why? What's happened? I've shit myself. It basically, that stuff just turned whatever I'd eaten into just milkshake, and it just dropped right through me. Right? So I goes back to the doctor and I says, these pills are making me sick. They're giving me like chronic diarrhea. This is really bad. And she said, oh, well, we were just trying you out on some of the cheaper medications to see how you'd react to them. Excuse me? Yes, we'll put you on the branded ones and that should make you better. Some people have that side effect. So they put me on the branded Prozac, and that stopped me shitting through the eye of a needle. But I tell you what, it's like, there's certain things you shouldn't take for the good of your gut. It does things, it do the job, but it also does things to your gut. The side effects to it. Taking large amounts of ibuprofen, probably you end up with Crohn's disease. It's like it'll cause like necrosis and shit. What? It'll kill your guts eventually. And then you will have some fucking problems. So it's like the side effects of the drugs that people take are what kills them. So they put me on Prozac and beta blockers at the same time. Right? Now beta blockers, once upon a time, were seen as a performance enhancing drug. Like, why? It's like, well, they deaden your they deaden your senses by way of things like anticipation. Weird. You know, if you're nervous about something and you take beta blockers, it doesn't make it go away, but it changes it. And it makes you feel kind of giddy. So I went on these, I were on beta blockers, and people say, hey, you remember that when they were considered a performance, they were considered a performance enhancing drug. Like, why? So because you don't feel so nervous off them. And you might be doing something that requires for you to be, it's big anticipation, you know, you're going to have to be focused and it's coming up to the big day and you're feeling anticipation. We know what anticipation feels like. And then you get to doing what you're doing and you settle down, you focus. Well, on beta blockers, you don't feel that sense of anticipation. So if you're nervous or anxious before something, right, you can be robbed of that. And I say robbed of it because you need that urgency. You need that sense of how important something is. It reflects in the end. If you think of it as method acting, it relates. I mean, I've known people who can't public speak, because I learned how to public speak when I was about 7. I know people who can't do it. When I used to do loads of public speaking when I was a kid, all the time, any excuse, anything needs to be read, anything needs to be done like that, they used to send me up front because I could do it. And I thought it was just dead easy, but there are those in the world and it's their worst nightmare to be asked to speak in public. Oh, okay. They can't do it. Now, in spite of nerves and being like, okay, I've got to get this right, and being frightened of fucking it up, still get away with it, still do it. And then even if you do fuck it up, people generally forgive you. When they see that it's a genuine, I'm a bit nervous, they'll let you get away with it. In fact, it's like they're rooting for you. You'll be in a church giving a reading, and you've only probably read it through once before, and they're asking you to read it again, and you go out, and it's like you get up there and you get to read it, and the audience is actually rooting for you. They're like, oh, go on. They don't want you to see you fail. They root for you. So when you cock up a bit, they forgive you. Because they root for you. Well, beta blockers turn loads of that vital sense data off. Right? They turn it off. And then if you get put on Prozac, right? Prozac just did things to me like give me a permanently dry mouth. And the combination of the drugs would make it as to where I can just open my mouth and just speak. And I don't have to even think about what I need to say. It all goes on so quickly, so it's like whack, whack, whack. And I'm that guy. Someone asks me a question, I know the answer to it, I go, what? And we're working with others in a tight space where you're all on a team on a bunch of tables. That ability for me to just remember things, people come to rely on it. So it's like, what's the part number for? What have we got in stock that'll? What have we? And I'll be like, bang, 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 tell you. And it'd be a matter of, take me 2 seconds. Put me on that cocktail of drugs. And it was, John, what day is it? And I'll be like, It's like the connection between mouth and brain that I'd always enjoyed as being an instantaneous relationship, gone. So I used to find myself unable to get words out sometimes, and then see the people I'm talking to go, and then change my mind about what I was going to say. Or say, oh, forget it. Walk off. I'm like, I've been chemically coshed here. So in this, it's a matter of, well, my employers, right? They didn't take take kindly to the fact that now one of their employees is on a kind of chemical cosh, right? And it's around that time that my problems with the management, where they kind of got the idea that it might be a good idea to get rid of me, that's when they first started. It's like, as soon as because I wasn't someone who was beset with like fucking mental health issues when I worked there. It's like I was doing all right, and then suddenly I went to the doctors one day, and then I developed mental health issues. So where it got in the way of my work. So eventually, right, I just threw these fucking pills in the bin and just never went to the doctors again, right? I'm 47 and not dead. And then years later, I get to, when we have the internet and we've got all this information available, I got to reading up about people of my blood type. And you get to reading, so yeah, common thing amongst people who are O negative is either constant low or high blood pressure. I have high blood pressure. My mother has low blood pressure, and her sisters have low blood pressure. So they have to take medication because of low blood pressure. It's like I'm overcharged and they're browning out, but it should be seen as normal. There's a big fluctuation. It's like we don't fully understand that system yet. We know certain things, but it's like you throw this extra variable in of a slightly different biological basis, pH level, things like that. It's like we don't know enough about this to even investigate it. But you go on the internet and you can read about high and low blood pressure in type 1 negative people, and it'd be like, if they don't have symptoms of other things, it should be considered normal. But if it goes hand in hand with other issues, it's something else. So this doctor I'd been to see, she was interested in putting me on them pills because she was somehow getting some kind of incentive for it. It's the only way I can process it. Because there was nothing wrong with me. In the first instance, I turned up because I had a lump under my arm that wasn't actually addressed, but I worked out what that was. And then years later, when we've got the internet and you can read things up, I know what that was. And it's like your immune system doesn't like antiperspirants. Like what? He says, yeah. It's like you spray that stuff in, you might as well spray WD-40 under your armpit. What? He says, yeah, you've filled your pores with like wax, and that's supposed to block your sweat from coming out. But it's like your body just reacts against it. And I used to get this thing where my shirts had like, you could wash them, I had to throw them away. They get these white, waxy stains under the armpits. And that was that my body actually expels it. It kicks it out. And what had happened under my arm was like a build-up. Some had built up, some had worked its way in, and that was an allergic reaction to it. So it's like, yeah, I have heightened immune responses to deodorants and antiperspirants. So just don't wear them. Can't wear them. It's like, why can't you wear them? It says, well, my body will start sweating them out. It'll use whatever's available to it to get rid of them. And what does that do? It's well, it just means you just start sweating. They make you sweat. They're not antiperspirants, they're perspirants, because you'll sweat to expel them. You know, it's an autoimmune issue. Work that out for myself. Don't have anything going on under my armpits that's of any concern at all. Everything down there is real healthy. And it's like, what did you do? Well, I stopped taking those socially enforced perfumes that people make us wear to mask our scent. That fashion or fad and that shaming that came from people smelling of what they called BO. BO being almost the climate change of its time. BO, body odor. They made it to smell like a man's sweat, because he's been like, working man, right? Was seen as an assault. An assault on the nose. So this thing come around about BO, and they started to make like TV commercials saying, girls not like you? Oh, well, you must have BO. Body odor. And it's like, to my mind, people don't smell bad. Never did. You get the odd person. I don't mind someone smells of sweat, right? If it's stale sweat on your clothes, well, I don't think you've any justification for not like changing a t-shirt every day of the week. No justification at all. You shouldn't be wearing the same clothes day in, day out, but people stink of shit I've got a problem with. And it's like, what? Yeah, that sweet smell. People stink of shit. That gets to me. I don't like that. And it's like, well, what's that suggest? Well, it suggests that they always wipe their ass, but they never have a bath. It's like there's smear marks all over the back half of them where they don't fucking look. where they can't see and they don't look at their asses in mirrors, and you get people who start to stink as shit. I don't like that. But it's like if someone smells like they're a worker, like they're sweating, I don't give a fuck. Been a footballer and stuff, had lads round me. Don't give a shit. But they made it a thing as to where, right, there's certain pharmaceuticals they kind of normalised, and I'll use the example of deodorant. But that's a normalised medication that in my case causes a side effect and is a waste of fucking money. Another one like that, or creeping up to that, was the willy-nilly free use of SSRIs. And you get smart, Alex, like me, right? And you say, so what are them pills you're on, do? Because I've worked with people who've been fucking loonies, proper loonies. I worked with a guy once called Dippy John, right? He's probably dead now. I'm pretty probably dead now because he was crackers. But he was a handsome fella. He reminded me in a lot of ways of, a profound number of ways, as the brother character in Dead Man's Shoes, Dippy John. He was like that. It's like, don't pick on him. Why? Too easy. He's retarded. And the thing is with him, if you didn't do that and just say, hey, fuck off, nutter, right? He'd come up to you with his brush because he were only any good for sweeping up. And he'd start telling you these fucking stories that were just pieces of movies put together and made about him, his dad, and his granddad. And because we had this thing, me and Dave, I used to work with, we were like, we had an understanding of like, we're alright, fuck these lot, you're normal. You'll do for me because you're normal. So me and Dave, the three of us who were normal in that place. Me, Dave and Keith. Keith's a nice lad. Keith actually became, through me, became friends with my dad, and he plays cards with my dad every Sunday afternoon now. But it's like there were three of us normal. And this fella come along and he'd be telling stories, and you'd be like, have you heard what he just fucking said? He's on about fucking magic and fucking inventions, and the world is like Nazi wild west, like steampunk World War II. His world. And he was telling this fucking story about how his granddad broke into a Japanese prisoner of war camp and rescued Barnes Wallis, who'd been captured by the Japanese, just in time for him to be brought back, smuggled back to the UK in time to invent the bouncing bomb, which was used, the old Dam Busters raid, famous. And if it weren't for his granddad, there'd have been no bouncing bomb, because Barnes Wallis would have died in that Japanese prisoner of war camp. And he'd be telling you this story, and me and fucking Dave be looking at each other all the way through it. Right? And we worked out that if you engaged with him, right, you could change the story to make it more believable. What? Yeah, you could actually help him rewrite it. And then days and days later, he doesn't fucking remember that he's told you the fucking Barnes Wallis story. He comes along and gives you the new version of it that you've edited as if that's what happened, and he fucking believes it. And if you call him a liar, he's like, why are you being funny with me? I'm only trying to tell you, I want to try and make conversation with you. Why are you picking on me? And you're like, and it'd be a matter of, I'd be on a machine and I'd be my air defenders on, and Dave would come over and be like, do you know that cunt's just told me? Right? So, right, for this problem he's got, right? And there were other things about him that were weird idiosyncrasies, was to where he used to drive, but he was too afraid to ever turn right. He has to cross the centre of the road. No, he won't turn right. So he devised a way of driving home all the way to Bury without taking a right turn. That used to take him about an extra 4 miles out of his way, make a make an 8-mile journey into a 12 mile journey. So he never had to turn right. This guy was fucked up. Yeah? And he had some wife at home. We don't know whether she existed or anything. It's like crazy. Fucking crazy. The guy was a lunatic. But it's like women would be working there, right? And they'd like the look of him. And they'd be like, hey, you're right. And they'd make friends with him, and it used to take them about a minute and 30 seconds to work out that he was fucking loony. But at first they're all like, oh, he's nice. Won't mind a bit of that. Like, really? Have a talk to him. What do we call him? What was his name? John. But we call him Dippy John, not to confuse him with me. He's Dippy John. It's like, where do you get that name from? It's because he's fucking insane. Deeply Dippy. Deeply Dippy John. He's fucking nuts. What was he being given to manage his mental health problems? Right? Well, it would be right to say, right, this guy is a combination of being dealt a fucking poor hand from the start by way of fucking hardware for a brain, making him a moron. Low IQ, this is a thing. Low IQ, moron. And what's happened to him on top of that? He's been abused, but they've called it something different. So he's been lied to his whole life. So he's been endlessly gaslit, doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined, because everything in his fucking childhood was a lie. And he's had the rug pulled from under him so many times that he just doesn't engage anymore. He's completely isolated in his mind. And then he tries to build these bridges from him to you and the fantastical fucking bullshit stories, because you can't tell the difference between what's happened to him, what he's seen in a movie, and what he's just dreamt up. So what does he need by way of treatment? And the answer is there isn't any. What? Yeah, he's not smart enough to ever think his way out of that problem. And he hasn't got the support or the people around him who would ever have him act his way into right thinking. You know, you ain't the right thinking. You get a moron like him and you teach him to do something like fish. Turn negative thinking into right action and learn a fish or something like that. Do something practical that's simple, that gives you agency. That'd be something that he could do that would maybe bring him closer towards the real world. He'd have something to talk about. And if he had enthusiasm for it, people would listen to his stories about fish. And if you're a bullshitter and you tell stories about fish, no one really gives a fuck. So you caught loads. You know it's not true, so you're learning from it. You could catch yourself wrong with that because it didn't actually happen. So I'm talking about here. Fucking detached, schizophrenic, insane, episodic, generally very sad, very miserable. And what was he given to treat that condition? Prozac. That's it. No doctor's appointments, no therapies, Prozac. He's in a job where they're not going to sack him because it would be seen as being a crime against fucking humanity because he's a guy who pushes a brush all day. They had another guy who pushed brush all day and he was a fucking lunatic too. It's like he used to work at Rochdale Cinema. He was the commissioner, this other chap who was a moron. And I'd known him since I was a little kid because he was the guy from the cinema. He was the guy who was like keeping the queue orderly and saying you could come in and saying stop and saying go and saying. So most folk thought he was right in the head. And it's like, you work with him years after the cinemas closed down and come to realise that that's the only job he ever had in his life, was being an usher in the cinema. And none of us took time because we were little kids, to weigh up what a fucking crazy, creepy fucking control freak he is. And I will endlessly accuse you of fucking ruthlessness when things haven't gone right for him. So if he puts something down and doesn't remember where he's put it, he's going to be hunting high and low for you to find out what you've done with his fucking brush, because he's forgot that he took it into the toilets with him and never left the toilets with it. And he'll be fucking coming looking for you. What have you done? His first thought is always, someone's fucked me over. So his answer from me, who basically it's like, I got put on this duty at one time. They said to me, John, John, view the fact that you're on the disciplinary role because you've upset the women, because you made someone cry. We are having to make redundancies, and you've got a choice of you become a general labourer or you're out of work. And I'm like, okay, so what's it going to cost me? She says, well, you will get a rate reduction in wage of 10 pence an hour. I'm like, okay, I'll be a general labourer. I was actually I would have been the best general labourer that place ever had. It's like, why? It's like, well, because I can count and you can read my handwriting. It's like, let the fucking sweeper up as sweep and I'll do this fucking organisational job that they're supposed to do and do very badly. You keep sweeping up and I'll do the fucking paperwork, you fucking morons. So they changed it then, and it was like, oh, so John's like the leader of the pack of fucking morons now. Because they couldn't guilt or threaten or play games with me with their fucking craziness. Because I'm like, see you, little. See me, big. See, huge fucking skip. See, small door into fucking skip. See me throwing you into fucking skip. Shut the fuck up. And these guys were so porous with their imaginations and so fucking detached from reality. Stuff like that used to work a fucking treat on them. And by the time they got round to telling what a mean cunt I were, everyone would be laughing about what they were moaning about. It's like, fucking sick of that, John. He says to me, if I don't stop mouthing off, he's going to throw me in the fucking skip. And people be like, it's like, I'll throw it on the roof. You'll have to work out how we get down. It's like, are you going to shut up? I do have to throw you on the roof. So you end up in that land, right? Fucking crazy town. So you've got these crazy town fucking guys, right? They're absolute fucking bonkers. They work in this place and they don't mind sweeping up all day, but they feel very important because they fucking nutters. Right? But it don't matter. Most of the time they just pass the word and shoot the shit and people laugh at how dumb they are. And it's like, well, doesn't this firm do a good job actually making it so those people can fucking live and not just be on the fucking permanent sick? Because these guys did full-time work. And what they did, right, fucking sweeping up. That place had a constant need for people to be sweeping up. And they did the sweeping. And that's all they were fucking good for. What were they being given? To manage some fucking profound mental illnesses. Prozac. So, I get it as to like, it doesn't seem to do fucking anything for these guys. Like, what would they be like without it? Are we to believe that they'd be fucking like monkeys, swinging on fucking bars? Heaven forbid they come off their meds. You see someone fucking pissed up, dangerous, fucking knife in their hand, and someone will say, "Oh, he's off his meds." Oh, well, that explains it, doesn't it? Because Prozac is a miracle drug. And I look at it like this. I'm like, hang on. A fucking pissed up fucking idiot, dangerous in the street with a knife in his hand, right? He's impulsive, and to find himself in that position, he's not just fucked up once, he's fucked up twice, he's fucked up 3 times. In fact, he's been fucking up for the last 20 years to land here. But today he's fucked up 4 and 5 times. And how's he fucked up 4 and 5 times? So he can't say no to himself. And that's his problem. Can't say no to himself. Can't say no to anyone else either. So if you can't discipline yourself, you can't say, no, I think that'll do for me, that's enough, right? How are you supposed to say no to others? Find yourself in a shocking situation and it'd be a matter of, oh, he's off his meds. And it's like, no. This guy's impulsive. What does it say in the literature that like a drug like Prozac does? Oh, well, it'll alter your mood. It's like, okay, so we're talking about serotonin. Yes, it's a mood stabilizer. It's like, it's not about mood. It's about this person's really impulsive and can be suggested to and can start to ideate and do something stupid. Where's Prozac come in for treating that? The answer is it doesn't. It's like, so what does it do? Well, it creates an excess of serotonin in the brain by switching off the reuptake machinery. So there's more of it. It's not kicking it out of the system, it's keeping it in. So it's like, so if serotonin does what we think as humans it does, all that would do is give you like a false sense of status. You actually feel it. I'm an important person. But you're not. Wouldn't that in turn lead to depression? What? It's like, well, yeah, you're changing the signals that your body and your brain are working with. It's like, wouldn't that give you a very false, very dangerous false sense of worth, of self-worth? It's like, wouldn't it be chemically induced? Right? That's if it works. It doesn't work. It's like, that's buying into the serotonin reuptake inhibitor, me saying, well, you know, if you're giving you a false sense of, and it was, well, it's better than what they were in misery before, it's better. It's like, hang on a minute. That's buying into your shit. It's like, your industry was destroyed when discoveries were made that serotonin is produced in the stomach and the gut as well. You're like, what? Yeah, it's like you turn off the serotonin reuptake inhibitors in the brain, right? So what? You're not regulating anything. You're just putting up a roadblock. You're just causing side effects for the purpose of side effects, because serotonin's got fuck all to do with depression, because depression, when they get to talk to all these people who are depressed, are suffering from crippling things like guilt and shame. They can put names on what they're suffering from, and you can observe what they're suffering from. But no, these pharma companies, they put it all under one umbrella and say it's to do with this. And it's like, well, it turns out it's got nothing to do with it. And it's like, you know, if you take away things that people are on Prozac have all got in common, right? They've all suffered an adverse childhood. All of them. Because this sort of serotonin issue, right, isn't an issue amongst people who weren't abused. The question's never asked. It's like this serotonin issue. It's like medical, right? I'll put it simply for you. I'll try to and not kill it. They're saying chemical imbalance, right? But you talk to these people who they've said are chemical imbalanced, and what they've all got in common is a history of fucking child abuse. And then there's no one, right, chemically imbalanced that didn't have a history of child abuse. No one. It's like there's been many years no one's actually listening to psychiatry and not listening to the psychologists. And the psychologists are not listening to the psychiatrists because the psychiatrists have, in the last sort of 10 years, have learned all sorts of stuff that makes a lot of what we do nonsense and like re-victimization even. It's like they said, mental health crisis in this country, and it says, yeah, and you know the NHS count every one of them fucking people that they give them tablets to as having treatment for it, being treated. It's like, you're not being treated. You're not being treated. You walked into there and you received a placebo with side effects, and the people it works best on, the ones who are the most capable of magical thinking. So it's like all of its success is based on the placebo effect. And isn't that brilliant? Because it's impossible to disprove that it's effective. And it's like, no, you just weaponize the mentally ill. You just brainwash them. It's like, really, you know, so people who suffer from depression and stuff, right? You get they have episodes of it. It's not all the time. Some might crack on like it is, but that's just an act, right? That's a game they play to get attention. That's part of the problem. But it's episodic. It's almost seasonal, and it's from real life crisis to real life crisis where this crops up, becomes a problem, strikes again. So it's like when something bad happens to someone and they have a bad emotional shock and they feel really low and they feel suicidal and the like, right? Generally, in a couple of weeks, depending on what's happened to them, I'm just saying generally, a couple of weeks they'll feel better. They will adjust to the new circumstances and they'll be able to handle themselves. But it's like you go to the doctor and he says, I think you're having a depressive episode, you may have a chemical imbalance, because they give that Prozac for short-term relief and long-term relief as well. So the doctor puts you on the pills and says, take these and they should start working in about 2 weeks' time. Well, you'd feel better anyway, and then they'd be credited to the pills and that fucking horrible dry mouth like sandpaper that they give you, let you know that they're working. That sort of thirst in your mouth that you can never get rid of, that reminds you that your medication's actually working and it has having a positive effect on your brain. It's like, this is the most disgusting, exploitative con trick in the history of mankind in view of the amount of money that it's made. And it's like those who've run with it are the greatest con men in the history of the world. And they've educated it back through the system a couple of generations now, this chemical imbalance theory shit. So those who now sell it, right, they don't know any different, because that's the thing, it's trick, isn't it? It's the same trick as everyone now who catches COVID who was vaccinated and doesn't die thanks the vaccine. It's the same trick. If it wasn't for the vaccine, I'd be pushing up daisies now with having the COVID. It was real mild. I only felt rough for about a day. Wasn't so bad. Thank God for the vaccine. I'd have been dead like the rest of them. It's like, are you getting the contracts that these so-called scientists are capable of fucking playing now? And it's like antidepressant drugs are the biggest one. It's like the problems that people have come from the way they behave impulsively. And there's nothing in the mechanics of those medications that address that or even capable of that. The problems are things like fatalistic, magical, black and white thinking. He hates me. I need to kill him. He hates me. I need to kill him. That. What does Prozac do to address that? What does brainwashing these people to say they have a chemical imbalance that's beyond their control, how does that in any way set them on a path to holding themselves accountable for their impulsive behaviour? And the answer is, it doesn't. It keeps them in a holding pattern with an excuse and a crutch. And it also recommends to these people that they let it be known that they are suffering from a mental illness. It gives them a crutch and it gives them somewhere to run to get sympathy from people, because a lot of it's about attention. It's like I've just run across so many people in my life, right, who've ran themselves into the fucking ground, only to later have this apotheosis and say, all that time, all those things that happened to me, I had a chemical imbalance in the brain, that's why I fucked up everything. That's why I made all those impulsive decisions and those fucking terrible gaping mistakes, is because I had a chemical imbalance. None of it was really my fault. But in calling it a chemical imbalance, it never gets you to ask the question of yourself and the part you played in your own situation, or attributing blame and actually trying to have a go at getting to know who your parents are, understanding you might have been abused and you think of them now as kind, loving masters, and beyond criticism. Like, oh no, we can't have people mouthing off, telling people about how their parents raised them. So Prozac acts as a smokescreen for the symptoms of child abuse. And it's a magical pill that works as well as a placebo. And comes with a cover story. It's like old news to me that this is an out and out con trick, but there's in the now them coming to realise that people's actions and the repercussions and what happens in their lives and their environment is what leads to depression, right? Now they've admitted that. It means it's always been true. It's like there are those of us around who've had our suspicions about those medications for a very, very long time. There's even people in the world who's made it their life's work to expose them as a fraud. They've all been proven correct. Those of us who work on the assumptions that they, in essence, just dull the mind and are a part of a package of what is Pavlovian mind control, right? It kind of, it's an eye-opener. Like, I'm on medication, it's a matter of, okay, so you've basically, you've swallowed a magic pill under the assumption that this is going to make you feel better. And it's like, no, it won't. It's a placebo, it'll do something. But the system that it attempts to manipulate and fails to isn't relevant to what's wrong with you. like if it does boost serotonin, which it appears it doesn't, because there's too many leaks in the system for it to have any effect. And then it'd be serotonin's about status. Serotonin's about, yeah, I'm good at that. So it's like, in my understanding of it, you know, if you had an issue with serotonin, it's like you were low status, right? I play video games, right? I've played video games since I was a kid. I still play video games now. And you know, I'm fucking damn ass good at some things and not so great at others. But the things I'm good at, I do it because I enjoy it. And it's a matter of, you know what? It's like, he might be fucking in many ways useless, but this guy's fucking brilliant at Ark Survival Evolved. What? It's like, yeah, massive world size, complicated logistics and sort of planning game as much as anything else. It's like, this guy's a genius at Ark Survival Evolved. It's like my nephew, right? You know, he's what would it is say? He's a shut-in. He's always been a shut-in. It's like he's been failed completely by the state and then by extension everyone else. But I like him. He's a good guy, right? Never seen anyone as good at him as I've never seen anyone as good as he is at Halo. Like, you know, shooter that's like, you get rewarded for being quick and precise and bold. He's fucking great at Halo. And it's like, I think of it like, sort of serotonin status. It's like, there's probably about 3 or 4 players, 3 or 4 people in the world better than you at Halo, mate. It's like that. It's a toss of a coin. You know, it's like we'll get you all in the same room and you'll all be as good as each other. Top bracket. And it'd be like, those guys take that real seriously and they adapt to it and they get super into it. It's like, isn't that a source of status, serotonin? As to you can admire that. It's like, fucking hell, well done. It's like that drug, that serotonin. It's like, Peterson talks about it in the hierarchies, social hierarchies. And then he put up once that pyramid of, a picture of the pyramids in Egypt. And he says, well, that's what the world is. If you think of the world as loads of little, different, not so little, some big, some small, competence hierarchies. That's what it is. Not one triangular pyramid system. Millions of them. And them all be competitive hierarchies. So it's like, if that is, you know, the basis of like our understanding of the meanings of serotonin, it's like, right, it's like I do a lot of thinking. I spend hours thinking, right? And I'm a reasonably good thinker. And it's like, I don't really need so much feedback. I know I'm a good thinker, so I don't need that. I have like an ego that recharges itself. It's like perpetually inflating and deflating like this. So it's stable. But it's like, sometimes I'll think of something that nobody else has thought of yet, and it'd be an obvious thing, and it'd just be a matter of point to it. So sometimes I'm first at certain things, and it's like that getting to something first. I've managed a few times, which is not invention. It's discovering something that was already there. It's good philosophy, isn't it? I'm not an engineer, but I've worked out a few processes of how the mind actually works, that have actually gone on and people have thought about it and said, you know, he's right, and it'd be that right that then everyone carries the same thing, and then it's so self-explanatory. and obvious a concept to those who then think about it themselves. It becomes like their idea. So it's like in the field of almost reinventing psychology that's gone on in the last 15 years or so because of all the fucking lies, all the cover-ups. I've played a part in that. So it's like serotonin status. Yeah, it's like in certain ones of these pyramids of competence, I'm at the very absolute top. I'm of the elite. You couldn't tell me I'm not. Right? But that only be, by way of value, as meaningful as time spent as experienced as my nephew being brilliant at Halo. I understand the man fully that Thomas Sowell, what a career he's had writing, but the world he's lived in, he's not been able to change it or really move it that much. He's made more progress in the last 10 years than he has in the last 60 or something. And he's been asked the same question a few times, because that's the thing with him. It's like he's old now, and he has become. He basically tells the same story over and over again. He's 90 something, you know what I mean? But he's functional, but it's a matter of he's become old. And when he's asked about his career, he said he'd much rather have been a photographer. Even in view of coming to know as much as he knows, he would have traded it to have been a wildlife photographer who maybe got pictures in magazines and things like that. He would have traded it, he'd rather done that. And if you push him out further, he'd rather have not flunked that tryout he had for the Brooklyn Dodgers and been a baseball player. He'd have far rather have been a baseball player than one of the great conservative intellects of the 20th century. Would have far rather have been a photographer and not know what he knows. It's like, that's a level of thinking that's beyond some. What? You've become... Yeah, but I have to live with being me, don't I? I know better. He's the chap who coined that equality thing that, it's like, you can be better in the morning than you are in the afternoon. Sometimes you're not even equal to yourself. So if you want equality, it's like, start with the individual. Start with consistency. Because we ain't got it. We have good and bad days, all of us. In fact, we have good and bad hours. Good and bad moments. We are not equal to ourselves. It's like, if we were, we wouldn't even be having that conversation. We'd have moved on to bigger problems in the world. But this, I tell you, if the internet hadn't have come along as a medium as to where people have been able to openly question certain structures, right, we'd have been done by now. It's like, look at psychology and psychiatry. It's like the pieces of them that are getting ripped out should have been ripped out in the 90s. The 90s. And what are we in? 2022. And the basis of their theorems should have been chucked out in the 90s because they'd already been exposed then. No, there's money to be made here. We've mystified this. It's mysticism now. And it's our fucking mysticism. We're going to build ourselves up as to say we know everything there is to know about the mind, and this is what we can do for you. And it's a fucking con trick. People buy it out of desperation, and then in that moment, they could be seen to have done something. all you had to do was take the pill. They'll sort the brain chemistry out for you. Do as you will. Carry on your fucking onslaught through the fucking planet Earth. Truth be, you don't know you're fucking born, mate. But we do, because we can earn from you for the rest of your life. We know how valuable you are. You don't. So on you go on your fucking tirade. On you go through your force of nature, tear through the planet Earth, not knowing you were fucking born. It's a tragedy. It's really, this is a serious fucking problem, this. Now it's a matter of, okay, now we admit it. And then you get the likes of myself and you get the likes of us. It's like, I listened to Vaknin the other day, who I respect, but I see him personally as having certain limitations. Basically, it's like he talks, he's a narcissist himself, right? And it's like, I have to fall into that category as well. It's like, what the fuck else could I be, right? So I have to fall into that as well. So it's like, as creatures go, I think I'm more advanced than Vaknin. Why? Because Vaknin's a narcissist. It's like, but yeah, but you are too. It's like, yeah, but I reckon you can do better than that. I reckon there's a way out of it. What? It's like, yeah, I reckon you can become something plus. You can be narcissist plus. You can be narcissist who no longer needs most of the attention. It's like, I think there's something deeply religious about that state of narcissism. I think it's almost a divine thing, as to where it's proof of something fucking big. And I put it that it's proof of war. It's a soldier. It's a psychological soldier. It's a man who carries imaginary weapons. He basically speaks them into existence. It's like, we've normalised what once we would be calling fucking creepy fucking pagan gypsy fucking magicians with their fucking mouths, telling lies, playing all kinds of games that they know the ins and outs of. And it's like, we've enabled the worst kind of fucking human collective behaviour, knowingly, because we've decided, or the powers that be have decided, we were easier to control the way we were before. And they used to keep us easy to control by limiting our access to information, keeping us ignorant. Well, it's like, they've sussed out now that just access to, if they've got access to the ideology now, the new religion, it's like they just have to play a tune that hits the right notes in that religion perpetually. And in their theories, it's like the social justice fucking maniacs on the loose, who don't really know what virtue is, and feel and imagine and think that feeling and imagining and thinking you care makes you a good person. So you get to a stage where they'll take malicious action in the real world. We see that with Extinction Rebellion, out of a sense of love and care for one's fellow man. And it's like, the question now has to be asked, did you build these monsters deliberately? Or are they just a happy side effect? Can you control these monsters? Or those who suggested that you create them, did they not tell you how? Telling you, the size and scope and the ins and outs of the fraud perpetrated by the pharmaceutical industry would point to the science of psychiatry in its partnership with the media and the I have to go with that in here and say the insurance companies, medical insurance. It's like they have pulled off a fucking sorcerer's fucking trick on a mass effect, mass scale. And it have had a mass effect and done generations of damage and will still be picking up the pieces in 200 years' time. That's how bad it is. That the antidepressants are a fucking placebo and that they're taking advantage of the vulnerable by brainwashing them, pushing them back out into the world. Chemical imbalance caused by the patriarchy, eh? It's like, fuck those people. Say, psychologists, fuck you. Doctors, surgery, GPs, mind reading, fuck you. You frauds. Like, there's people who've made great livings in life prescribing people chemical koshes and deluding them, deliberately implanting false narratives and then sending them on the way to fucking self-destruct, having turned them into an endless fucking supply of income. Could have told you this 10 years ago. But now they've admitted it. It's big, but they're not gonna make this front page. It's out there. They'll carry on prescribing them.